Boris Johnson is not giving up. He wants to come back. He wants to take back control of his party and get rid of Sunak and the Tory government. This whole row between Boris and Rishi, it's getting absolutely ridiculous. It's escalating on a daily basis. It's not good for the country or democracy. But I think the Tories need a bit of a shake-up anyway. Doesn't mean that Boris Johnson is the man to save it. And actually, this story that we have for you guys from the Express goes back to the rumours that we talked about yesterday, and Nigel Farage indicating that he will be willing to consider a new right-wing movement or party alongside people like Boris Johnson, maybe people like Jacob Rees-Mogg and other right-wingers. Now, it created a big drama because some people on the right said, we still like Boris, yeah, we'll do it, and we like Nigel. Some people said, Boris is done, but I would support Nigel. It's a bit confusing. It depends who leads it. Now, all that aside, Boris Johnson came and said Rishi Sunak is talking rubbish about how things went down. The whole so-called witch hunt and the plot against him, not just by people like Sue Gray or Harriet Harperson, but also Rishi Sunak himself. Obviously, he was accused of bringing down the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister at the time. Rishi Sunak came and actually said, well, Boris, he said, he asked me to do something that I wasn't prepared to do in regards to the honours list for the House of Lords and all that. But again, this is just nonsensical. It's just smokes and mirrors. It makes absolutely no sense why we should focus on this part. What I want to focus on is what Boris Johnson might plan to do in the future, because it will still affect the political spectrum. It will affect our political system. Even if you're sick and tired of Boris, it will still be important to focus on it because he's a big player in this chaotic Westminster village. Now, the Prime Minister obviously the former Prime Minister echoed his words when he left Downing Street saying, I'll be back. And apparently he did say it in Arnold's voice to the Express. He said, I want to thank all the wonderful Daily Express readers across the country for their continuing support. We must fully deliver on Brexit and on the 2019 manifesto. We must smash Labour at the next election. Nothing less than absolute victory and total Brexit will do. And as the great Arnold Schwarzenegger said, I'll be back. Now, his argument is that I couldn't get Brexit done properly and I couldn't deliver on the manifesto, partly because of everything that happened in 2020 with lockdown and all that. And he was saying, well, without saying it directly, he's implying that he was controlled and the establishment around him made things difficult. There were a lot of obstacles, basically making excuses. I agree with him that, of course, there are obstacles in the establishment, the same obstacles that Liz Truss faced. But you can't really use it as a full excuse because he was in power for, 3 years, almost 4 years, and you could do something. Or you could at least tell the public why you're having problems in regards to not delivering on your manifesto pledges. Again, this is not really about him, it's about the whole team. And he could argue that there were some people in the cabinet who were not really on his side. But he appointed them. He should have sacked people like Rishi Sunak a while ago. But again, he was afraid of having Rishi Sunak being on the outside, becoming a rebel. Well, now Boris Johnson is the rebel that Rishi Sunak needs to be careful of. And now that he's no longer an MP, it's even more dangerous because Boris Johnson is going to become an activist. He's going to become a campaigner. He could do and say whatever he wants. And it's absolutely dangerous. So this happened, right? And Rishi Sunak obviously is just fighting back and his row continues. One of the interesting things about this, when you scroll down in this story, is about Penny Mordaunt. Yeah, she's still a thing. Penny Mordaunt was speaking at some sort of event. It was the Centre for Policy Studies at the Margaret Thatcher Conference. She said, she attacked Boris Johnson. She said, we shouldn't really attack Parliament for carrying out this work. So Boris Johnson, and actually I agree with Boris on this, that the Privileges Committee chaired by Harriet Harman and all the others, it's not a legal court where they were acting like it was basically a legitimate court and trying to find him guilty. It wasn't, and it was already biased, and they already made their decision anyway. But so that's the truth, and he simply attacked the Privileges Committee. Now Penny Mordaunt is having a bit of a meltdown, saying, "Oh, you're attacking democracy." It's not really about democracy. She says we have to be really strong about people who are attacking institutions. People who are attacking the House of Commons, for carrying out its work. People who are attacking the media. Oh, she's a wet letters, isn't she? She says, the price of not doing so is going to be very great indeed. That's Penny Mordaunt. I'm not really surprised that she said that, but it is what it is. We had another about Lord Marland who said personal jealousy played a factor among the Tory members of the Privileges Committee. He said that Boris resigned because he was offended by the fact that they didn't believe him. There is a lot of difference of views and personal jealousy within the Conservative Party as there is within the Labour Party. In some ways, you're better coming up in front of an entirely Labour group than a mixture. Who would be Prime Minister? And there's not been a Prime Minister since Margaret Thatcher who has not left office vilified. That's also an excellent point about the flaw in British politics over the last few decades. And there's no happy ending for any of these leaders. Now, you might say that's just normal in politics. It's a thankless job and eventually you get brought down. But you have had essentially an ending. It happens to almost a lot of the American presidents. Now, I do not like Barack Obama or anything that he stands for, but in terms of the mood in the country in America, he did 8 years, he stood down, and he's just living his life. He wasn't really vilified in that sense, and you might say that was because of the mainstream media's narrative, but it happens all the time from all sides. Ronald Reagan stood down and it was fine. But here, since Margaret Thatcher, every single leader and prime minister was completely vilified, maybe with the exception of John Major, only because it was so boring, nobody cared to even be angry at him. So that's the latest on this story, and I wanted to show you the Express news and analyze it for you guys to see where we stand. Again, as I said, it's getting boring talking about all this Boris Rishi nonsense, but it is important for us to stay up to date in case something important happens. Anyway, let me know what you think. I'm Mahyar Tousi, and we are the media.